My name is Natalie, and at 28 years old, my sister asked me to step in last minute for a bridesmaid to humiliate me, but her plan backfired as her fiancé left her in front of the 300 guests. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. My sister Lena and I were never very close growing up. She was the golden kid, the lovely one, and the one who received the bedroom with the larger window. I was just Natalie, the younger sister who came along. When I turned 25, I relocated 3 states away for employment. And to be honest, the distance did more to strengthen our bond than anything else. We began messaging regularly and having actual discussions. And for the first time in my life, I wondered whether we could be true sisters. Then she met Ethan. Ethan was a man I'd gone on 3 dates with in college. 3 uncomfortable coffee dates during which we recognized we had no chemistry and mutually ghosted each other. When Lena informed me she was dating Ethan and showed me his photo, I chuckled and reminded her of our failed relationship years ago. She became silent on the phone. I told her it meant nothing, that I hardly remembered the person, and she appeared to accept it. They were engaged 6 months later, and Lena invited me to be her maid of honor. I was honestly moved. I took time off work, traveled home for every event, spent much too much money on her bachelorette party, and did it all with joy because I felt we had finally become the sisters I had always wanted us to be. A month before the wedding, Lena contacted me distraught. She stated that one of her bridesmaids had pulled out due to a family issue, leaving the numbers unequal. She asked whether Emma, my best friend, could step in at the last minute. Emma accepted since she's great, and Lena appeared grateful. She informed me that she was planning a champagne and gold color scheme and emailed Emma a link to the exact outfit she wanted her to wear. Sophia placed her order quickly. I traveled home and spent the week before the wedding with our folks. Lena seemed nervous and irritable, but I put it up to wedding anxiety. The morning of the ceremony, all of the bridesmaids gathered at the location to prepare. I stepped in with Sophia and instantly sensed something was amiss. Every bridesmaid wore a deep burgundy dress. Everyone except Emma, who was dressed in champagne gold and appeared to have entered the wrong wedding. My stomach sank. Lena entered from the wedding suite in her robe, wearing a contented expression. She exclaimed loudly to her maid of honor, a college buddy who had taken over the job from me without explanation 1 week before. I knew Rachel would attempt something. She's been envious of me and Ethan from the beginning. I asked her what she was talking about. She informed the whole audience that I had been infatuated with Ethan for years, that I had tried to disrupt their relationship several times, and that she felt I had purposefully put Emma in the incorrect dress to generate trouble on her wedding day. I remained still as Emma took out her phone and showed everyone the text thread with Lena, the link to the champagne dress, and Lena's message. "This is perfect. Order it ASAP." The room fell quiet. Lena's face contorted, and she began yelling that I must have fabricated the text, that I was always envious of her, and that I want her life. Her college roommate attempted to calm her down, but Lena pushed her away and pointed at me, claiming that I had undoubtedly slept with Ethan and that this was all part of my plan. That's when Ethan came in. He heard the shouting in the corridor where the guys were getting dressed. He looked at Lena and inquired what was going on. She went to him weeping, telling him that I was trying to ruin everything and that she had always loved him. Ethan stared at her, then at me, and finally back at her. He said he had told her 100 times that nothing ever occurred between us, that we had 3 lousy dates 6 years ago, and that he was tired of her continuously bringing it up. He said she forced him ban me on social media, searched his phone weekly for messages from me, and accused him of thinking about me during intimate times. The room was completely quiet. Lena began weeping more, stating she loved him so much and was afraid of losing him. Ethan took a step away from her. He told her he couldn't do it longer, that he had ignored the warning signs for too long since he assumed she'd settle down after the wedding. He apologized, but he couldn't marry someone who trusted him so little. He walked out. Lena sank on the floor crying as her bridesmaids looked about helplessly. I took Sophia's hand and we departed. We drove to a diner and got pancakes, and I sat in my burgundy bridesmaid dress having breakfast at 11:00 a.m. It was supposed to be my sister's wedding day. My phone rang for hours with calls from my parents, Lena, and relatives asking to know what happened. I switched it off and ordered some more coffee. 4 months later, I learned from my mother that Lena had begun treatment. She contacted me last week requesting to meet for lunch. She said she wanted to tell me something crucial about Ethan, something I deserved to know from the start. I haven't decided if I'll go yet. I look at Lena's text message for the 12th time, rewrite the words until they blend together on my phone screen. I have something essential to say about Ethan. Something you deserve to know from the start. My gut twists into knots because I can't conceive anything she might disclose now that would be relevant. Ethan walked out of that wedding 4 months ago, and I honestly assumed that was the end of it. I laid my phone down on the kitchen counter and then picked it up again, 30 seconds later, to read the message. The words do not alter. I grab my phone and dial Sophia's number, pushing the call button before I can stop myself. She answers on the second ring, and I don't even say hello before getting right into it, telling her about Lena's message and how my hands won't stop trembling. Sophia responds immediately and firmly. She warns me that I should not see Lena alone, since this might be another setup or manipulation. We speak for 30 minutes, going around in circles about whether I should even react, and eventually agree that if I do this, she will accompany me as backup. I thank her and hang up, then spend the rest of the evening gazing at my phone, trying to figure out what Lena could have to tell me. I slept poorly that night, waking up every few hours to see if Lena had sent another message. She has not. The following day at work drags on indefinitely, and I can hardly focus on the spreadsheets in front of me because my mind is racing through possibilities. That evening, I texted Emma again, and we discussed it one more time. She tells me that I don't owe Lena anything, that I can just disregard the message and go on with my life. But something about the way Lena phrased it, the deserve to know from the beginning portion, makes me believe this is genuinely crucial. After 4 days of thinking about it and driving myself insane with curiosity, I eventually text Lena back. I tell her I'll meet her for lunch at a neutral spot, Riverside Cafe, which is halfway between our parents' house and my apartment. I mention that I'm bringing Sophia, and she can take or leave it. I press send before I can second-guess this myself, and I immediately want to hurl my phone across the room. My phone vibrates less than 5 minutes later with Lena's response. She accepts my conditions without arguing or pushing back. I gaze at her message in full disbelief because the old Lena, the one from before the wedding fiasco, would have insisted on it being just the two of us, so she could control the topic and narrative. This fast decision to allow Sophia to come makes me frightened in an entirely other way. Perhaps Lena has changed, or this is a new type of manipulation that I haven't discovered yet. I share the text thread to Sophia, who answers with 3 question marks. Clearly as startled as I am, we plan to meet at my flat an hour before lunch and drive over jointly. The morning of the lunch approaches, and I wake up feeling like I'm about to puke up. I try to eat breakfast, but my stomach barely tolerates half a slice of toast before rebelling. Sophia arrives at my door on time, takes one glance at my face, and pulls me into an embrace. She assures me we can still cancel, that we can get in her vehicle right now and drive to the beach instead and forget about everything. But I shake my head and grab my jacket because I need to hear what Lena is about to tell me, even if it will screw me up all over again. Sophia drives since my hands are too shaky to drive safely. Throughout the 30-minute trip, she maintains a continuous stream of conversation, discussing her job, her bothersome coworker, and anything other than the meal we're going to have. Every few minutes, she tells me that we can go whenever I choose and that I am in control of the situation. We arrive at Riverside Cafe 15 minutes early and take a table in the rear corner that allows me to view the door. I order a coffee I don't drink, and Sophia orders a tea she won't touch. We wait in tight stillness, observing everyone who comes through the door. When Lena eventually steps in around lunchtime, I hardly recognize her at first. She's dropped at least 18 talalams since the wedding, perhaps more, and she seems fatigued. Her face is smaller, her clothing hang loosely across her body, and there are dark bags under her eyes that cosmetics can't quite conceal. She notices us right away and goes over carefully as if she is unsure whether we are going to get up and leave. She sits in the empty chair across from me without ordering anything. Her hands are trembling as she folds them upon the table in front of her. She opens her lips twice before speaking, and her voice shakes almost as much as her hands. She apologizes for everything that transpired during the wedding, including the allegations, the dress arrangement, and the whole misery she caused me. She informs me that her therapist, Hannah, has been assisting her in recognizing that she had an intense jealousy issue that had broken her relationship with Ethan and harmed her connection with me. I sit there without saying anything, just listening and processing the reality that my sister is accepting responsibility for her misdeeds. Lena continues, stating that Ethan informed her about our 3 college dates on their second date, and she has been concerned about it ever since. She admits to making him ban me on social media, constantly checking his phone for communications from me and accusing him of thinking about me during their most intimate times. Her voice breaks as she describes how she pushed him away with her continual distrust and accusations. She assures me that the dress arrangement was not a last-minute panic or wedding day worry. She had planned the sabotage for weeks. She wanted to show to everyone, particularly Ethan, that I was attempting to spoil her wedding. She figured that if she could make me appear awful in front of all those people, Ethan would finally realize that I was the true problem in their relationship, not her jealousy. She truly assumed that shaming me would solve everything between them. Lena is weeping now, actual tears flowing down her cheeks, and I feel Sophia grab my hand under the table so hard that it nearly hurts. I take a deep breath and ask Lena the question that has been on my mind since I received her text. I ask her why she's giving me all of this now and what the critical information about Ethan is, because she hasn't told me anything I didn't already know or could have guessed. Lena takes a deep breath and wipes her eyes with a napkin that is already unraveling in her hands. She informs me that Ethan had attempted several times to invite me to spend time with them as a couple. He wanted to establish that there was nothing between us. I wanted to show her that we can all be normal together. But every time he offered it, she rejected and accused him of trying to cheat. She claims she would scream at him for hours after he brought it up, telling him he was humiliating her by making her watch him flirt with me. Ethan would attempt to explain that this was not his purpose, that he only wanted her to understand how platonic our past was, but she couldn't hear him. She was so consumed with jealousy that every mention of my name threw her into a frenzy. She shifts in her seat and begins speaking quicker, as if she has to get everything out before losing her nerve. She confesses that Ethan proposed couples therapy 6 months before the wedding. He was concerned about her jealousy and believed that a professional might help them work through it together. But Lena refused, telling him that he was to blame for not understanding her sentiments. She claimed she convinced herself that his idea of treatment indicated he was going to leave her for me. In her perspective, therapy was simply his method of prepping her for the split so he wouldn't feel bad about running away with me. She acknowledges now that it made no sense, but it seemed perfectly genuine and reasonable to her at the time. Ethan attempted to explain that treatment would benefit them both, and that it was not about blaming, but she shut off any discussion about it. The waitress comes by to refill our water glasses, and Lena stops chatting and walks away. Then she looks directly at me and says, "The important information she wanted to tell me is that Ethan never had any romantic feelings for me, not even a tiny bit." She claims her therapist helped her understand she had created a whole scenario in her brain that had no basis. In fact, Ethan never looked at me in a special way, never addressed me until she brought it up, and never gave her any reason to believe he wanted me. She built a scenario in which I was secretly in love with him, and he was secretly in love with me, and she was the only one who saw the reality. I sat there utterly startled, since I expected her to share some genuine secret. I assumed Ethan had said something to someone, or there was some incident I was unaware of. But this is simply her confirming what I already knew, and what everyone else at the wedding knew. I tell her I could have told her that myself because I was there for those 3 awkward coffee meetings, where we discussed economics homework and concluded we had nothing in common. I tell her that the first time she showed me his photo, I hardly recalled him. I had to think for a while before recognizing who he was. Lena nods and says she understands now, but she spent years creating a dream in which I was secretly in love with Ethan and attempting to steal him away from her. She claims she convinced herself that I relocated 3 states away only to make Ethan miss me. In her opinion, my work opportunity and yearning for independence were irrelevant. Everything I did was part of an intricate scheme to persuade Ethan that he preferred me over her. She would stay awake at night, picturing scenarios in which Ethan would recall our coffee sessions and realize I was his soulmate. She claims her therapist helped her recognize that she was projecting her own anxieties onto me and Ethan, creating a villain in her tale to avoid having to confront her own concerns about not being good enough. Emma eventually speaks out, her voice sharper than I've heard from her before. She questions Lena about why she replaced Grace as maid of honor 2 weeks before the wedding. The question lingers in the air, and I realize I had nearly forgotten about that detail and everything else that had occurred. Lena stares down at the table, her cheeks flushing with humiliation. She says she was concerned Grace would support me as she carried out her dress sabotage plot. Grace had been her college roommate and knew us both well, and Lena was afraid Grace would speak up and wreck the entire plan. So, she fabricated a narrative about requiring someone who understood her vision better and downgraded Grace to normal bridesmaid status. She claims Grace was wounded and bewildered, but she accepted it since she didn't want to make problems before the wedding. I can feel rage building in my chest like boiling water filling a jar. This was neither a wedding day panic attack or stress-induced psychosis. Lena had been plotting to humiliate me for weeks, even months. She had carefully planned the dress colors, time, and arrangement with Emma. She had switched her maid of honor precisely to ensure that no one would support me when she accused me in front of everyone. Every element was deliberate and vicious, intended to make me appear like the villain in her made-up scenario. I recall all the phone calls leading up to the wedding in which she sounded appreciative for my assistance and delighted that we were growing closer as sisters. All of that was a ruse while she was devising this sophisticated trap. Lena leans across the table to grab my hand, but I jerk it away before she can contact me. She begins weeping harder, and the tears flow down her face quicker than she can wipe them away. She says she understands if I never forgive her, just as she wouldn't forgive herself if she were in my situation. But she needed me to know the truth about how twisted her thinking had gotten. She claims her therapist, Hannah, has been assisting her in understanding the need of accepting full responsibility for her actions, rather than simply apologizing and expecting things to be okay. She is aware that she damaged both our relationship and her connection with Ethan, all because of problems that existed solely in her imagination. I ask her whether she has had any touch with Ethan since the wedding. Even in my own ears, my speech sounds chilly. Lena shakes her head and more tears fall to the table between us. She claims Ethan deactivated her phone number the same day he left, and she discovered through a mutual contact that he relocated to a different location around a month later. She does not blame him for avoiding her. She claims she put him through hell throughout their relationship, accusing him of things he never did, restricting who he could communicate to, and monitoring his phone like a detective, seeking for proof of a crime that never occurred. She confesses that leaving the wedding was perhaps the finest move he ever made, even if it devastated her at the moment. Emma inquires, "I'm too angry to voice myself." She wants to know if Lena has apologized to Ethan for what she has put him through. Lena wipes her face with her sleeve before nodding slowly. She claims she sent him a letter through her therapist around a month ago. Hannah assisted her in writing something that accepted responsibility without making excuses or asking for anything in return. She mailed it to his new address, but she's not sure if he ever read it. She says she hopes he does, because he needs to know that none of it was his fault and that he did nothing wrong, but she doesn't expect or want a reply. She only wanted him to know that she realizes how horribly she treated him. I slide my chair away from the table and rise up, my legs wobbly after sitting through Lena's confession. I tell her that I need time to comprehend what she has told me, and that I am not ready to forgive her or reestablish our relationship. The words come out flat and exhausted since I've been keeping them in for an hour as she sobbed and detailed her therapeutic breakthroughs. Lena nods and wipes her face with an already damp tissue. She says she expected that, but she hopes that one day I would be willing to try. Her voice breaks on the last phrase. And a part of me wants to console her, but another part recalls standing in that bridal suite while she accused me of sleeping with Ethan in front of everyone. Emma steps up next to me and places her hand on my shoulder, a quiet reminder that we're leaving. As we prepare to depart, Lena notes that she has apologized to Grace for setting her up with the wrong clothing. She stares at Emma with red, puffy eyes and says she knows it won't change anything, but she wanted Emma to know she was sorry. Emma accepts the apology, but warns Lena that fixing what she caused to both of us will need more than just saying sorry. Her tone is courteous but frigid, and I'm glad she's here because I doubt I could manage this talk alone. We walk out of the cafe into blazing afternoon sunlight, which feels strange given how heavy everything feels. Sophia and I drive home silently for 30 minutes until I burst into tears. The tears come quickly, and I can't stop them. Big, ugly tears make my entire body quake. Sophia drives over into a gas station parking lot and simply sits with me as I cry into my hands. I'm not sure if I'm sobbing out of rage, relief, or sadness for the sister connection I believed we were developing. Perhaps all three are combined to create something I can't describe. Emma does not try to stop me or reassure me that everything will be fine. She simply offers me tissues from the glove box and waits for me to breathe properly again. When I eventually calm down enough to speak, I tell her I'm not sure what to do with all of this knowledge. Knowing that Lena planned everything and purposefully set up that clothing predicament to embarrass me makes things worse. Emma says we don't need to sort things out right now. We may simply go home, watch crappy TV, and eat ice cream. That sounds wonderful. So I nod, and she drives back onto the road. That evening, my mother calls to inquire how the lunch went because Lena informed her we met. I give her a quick synopsis while sitting on my couch with a pint of chocolate ice cream. Mom listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she gives a deep sigh. She adds that she and her father had been concerned about Lena's mental health for years, but were unsure how to confront it. This amazes me, because my parents never discussed Lena's troubles when we were growing up. Mom claims they spotted things, but assumed she'd outgrow them, which obviously did not happen. I ask her what they saw, and there is a long delay before she responds. Mom confesses that Lena had similar jealousy issues with her high school lover and accused his female friends of attempting to take him. She was always calling him to see where he was and who he was with. They assumed she'd outgrown it, but the troubles were more deeper than they understood. I'm sitting there, clutching my phone, thinking how I never knew any of this. Mom claims they did not want to label Lena or make her feel awful about herself, so they just urged the boyfriend to be patient with her. He ultimately broke up with her because the jealousy was too strong. I tell Mom that I wish someone had informed Ethan about this tendency before he got engaged to her. Mom's voice becomes low as she explains that they considered it, but did not want to interfere with Lena's relationship. She sounds remorseful now, as if she realizes she should have said something. We talked for another 30 minutes before I told her I had to go. After we hang up, I sit in the dark, reflecting on how many people spotted warning signals yet said nothing. 2 weeks after the lunch, I received a text from Ryan Foster, Ethan's closest buddy from the wedding. I recognized his name from the guest list and saw him standing with the groomsmen that morning. He asked if we can chat since Ethan wanted to contact me, but was unsure whether it was okay. My initial impression was that this is strange, but then I remembered that Ethan was also a victim in all of this. I write back, "Sure, we can talk." Ryan recommends we meet for coffee the next day at a location near my flat. I agree to meet Ryan for coffee, curious what Ethan has to say. The next afternoon, I enter into a tiny coffee shop, and Ryan is already seated at a corner table. He's tall, with black hair, and appears exhausted as if he hasn't slept properly. We shake hands, and I sit across from him. Ryan reveals that Ethan felt bad that I became involved in Lena's allegations, and wanted to apologize for not defending me more aggressively that day. He claims Ethan has been beating himself up over it for months, repeating the mourning over and again. I tell Ryan that Ethan does not owe me an apology because he was dealing with a personal situation at the time. Ryan nods, but says Ethan wants me to know that he wishes he had handled things better. He takes out his phone and shows me a text from Ethan that essentially says the same thing. Ryan informs me that Ethan was about to cancel the wedding the week before, but his parents persuaded him to try again. They informed him that every relationship has issues and that marriage will improve things. Ethan knew it was terrible, but he loved Lena and wanted to think she might change. Ryan says Ethan regrets not believing his intuition and leaving sooner. He believes that if he had terminated things secretly before the wedding, I would not have been pulled into the turmoil. I appreciate Ethan thinking of me, but I tell Ryan that Lena would have found another reason to blame me for the breakup. Her issues were not actually about me or Ethan. They were about whatever was going on in her own mind. I asked Ryan if Ethan knew about the dress arrangement plan, and he said, absolutely not. Ethan was stunned when he went into the room and heard what Lena was saying about me. Ryan claims Ethan had no knowledge Lena gave Sophia the incorrect dress color on purpose. He assumed it was an honest mistake until he noticed how pleased Lena appeared when she began making charges. That's when it all hit for him, and he knew how far gone she was. Ryan leans back in his chair and says, Ethan spent the whole morning getting ready, thinking about how to bring up his concerns about the relationship one more time. He never imagined he'd walk in on a planned attack. I believe Ryan because Ethan's face that morning showed real confusion and horror. Ryan gives me Ethan's new phone number and says, Ethan would like to apologize directly if I'm open to it. He jots it down on a napkin and slides it across the table. I accept the number, but inform Ryan. Half of me wants to talk to Ethan and clear the air, but another half believes it would be best to leave things in the past. Ryan says he understands and encourages me to take my time. We drink our coffee and chat about other topics for a time. Just typical chatter about work and life. It's good to have a casual conversation that doesn't involve wedding drama or family issues. Ryan offers me a short embrace as we leave the coffee shop, saying he hopes I'm doing well. I tell him I'm working on it, which feels like the most honest response I can provide. I spend the following month immersed in work, taking on extra assignments to keep my mind from spiraling. Sophia checks in with me every few days, and one Friday, she arrives at my flat with 2 packed bags and declares that we're heading to the beach for the weekend. I don't fight because I know she's correct. I need to get away from everything. We drive 3 hours to a little seaside town and stay in a poor hotel room that smells like salt water and dirty carpet. We spent Saturday wandering along the beach, and Sophia allows me to tell about everything that happened without interrupting or attempting to repair it. I tell her how strange it is that my sister's mental health crisis became the defining point of my year. I'm upset at Lena, but yet sad for her. I'm not sure if I'll ever trust her again, even if she gets better. Sophia listens and nods, occasionally tossing shells into the waves. Sunday morning, as we sit on the beach eating donuts and watching the dawn, I notice my chest isn't constricted for the first time in weeks. When we drive home that afternoon, I feel like I might be able to do more than simply survive. The next week, I'm sitting at my desk, gazing at Ethan's phone number, which Ryan gave me. I've picked up my phone a dozen times and put it down because I'm not sure what to say to him. But then I remember how he stormed out of the wedding and presumably spent months dealing with his own problems. Perhaps we both deserve to clear the air. I write him a text saying hello and asking if he'd like to chat sometime. He answers within an hour, saying sure and giving me his new number, which he changed after everything transpired. We scheduled a call for Thursday evening, and I spent the next 3 days terrified about speaking with someone I hardly knew. When Thursday arrives, I nearly cancel 5 times, but at 7 o'clock, I phone his number and he answers on the second ring. The first several minutes are so uncomfortable that I consider faking poor reception and hanging up. But then Ethan says he has wanted to apologize to me for months, and the talk suddenly becomes easy. He tells me he feels bad that I was brought into Lena's charges and that he should have defended me more aggressively in that moment rather than simply defending himself. I can detect real shame in his voice, which helps me feel less alone in this circumstance. Ethan begins discussing how he ignored so many warning signs since Lena was flawless in every other way. He describes her as caring, supportive, and hilarious. And he convinced himself that her jealousy was only uncertainty that would go away after they married, and she felt more confident in the relationship. He believed that if he demonstrated his allegiance enough times, banned me on social media as she requested, and allowed her to check his phone whenever she wanted, she would finally trust him. He now confesses that he was mistaken to believe that marriage would solve her difficulties, and he wishes he had seen the pattern sooner. I listened to him talk about constantly checking in with her when he was out with friends, about avoiding female coworkers because it upset her, and about the time she accused him of thinking about me during sex. And he actually tried to convince her that wasn't true rather than admitting how ridiculous the accusation had been. He sounds fatigued, simply describing it all, and I realize that he was drowning in that relationship long before the wedding. I tell Ethan he doesn't need to apologize since he was coping with his own problem that morning, and I don't blame him for his reaction. I explain that I was only collateral damage in Lena's problems, but he was the true object of all the jealousy and control. We end up talking for more than an hour, and I learn he's a genuinely kind guy who got himself into a horrible position with someone he cared about. He tells me of his remorse about leaving Lena weeping on the floor, how his parents were upset with him for humiliating the family, and how half of their common acquaintances supported her since they couldn't believe lovely Lena would do something so planned. He relocated to a new city 2 months after the wedding fiasco because he couldn't bear going across people who knew them as a couple. I feel protective of him, despite the fact that we're virtually strangers because I've been blamed for Lena's troubles before. Ethan notes that he began treatment shortly after the wedding, working through his own trust, difficulties, and learning to recognize dangerous relationship patterns before they became too severe. His therapist assisted him in seeing that he had been in a dominating relationship and was unaware of it, since Lena's control was disguised as love and care. He claims that leaving that wedding was the most difficult thing he had ever done, but it was also the wisest decision since remaining would have ruined him in the long run. When he talks about it, I hear genuine conviction in his voice, as if he has finally realized that leaving was the correct decision, even though it was painful. He asks how I'm doing with everything, and I admit that I'm still digesting it all, debating whether I want to reestablish my friendship with Lena or just let it go. Ethan does not give me advice, but he does listen, truly listens, and that seems more helpful than any advice could be. We conclude the call by agreeing to remain in touch as friends, which seems awkward given that he is my sister's ex and we had 3 bad dates years ago, but it also feels healthy and honest. There's something liberating about talking to someone who knows precisely how Lena's jealousy appears on the inside. After we hang up, I sat on my couch for a long thinking about how strange life is, how the wedding tragedy introduced me to someone I would not have known otherwise. I save his new number on my phone under the name Ethan. There's no last name or context, just a person who gets it. 3 months have passed, and I'm having coffee before work when my phone vibrates with a text from Lena. She asks if I'd be willing to meet again, stating she's made significant progress in treatment and wants to share what she's learned about herself. I gaze at the message as my coffee cools, trying to decide how I feel about meeting her again. Half of me wants to ignore it and continue living my life without her turmoil, but another half is eager about what she has to say. I text Emma to see what she thinks, and she says I should do whatever seems right for me and that she will back any option. I thought about it for 4 days before ultimately responding to Lena and saying, sure, I will meet her, but this time I want to do it alone without Emma. I want to know whether Lena and I can have a meaningful conversation without a barrier. We arranged to meet at the same cafe where we had lunch previously, and as I go in, Lena is already seated at a corner table. She appears to be healthy, as if she has been sleeping well and eating regularly. Her hair is pulled back and she is wearing minimal makeup. Nothing like the flawlessly dressed version of woman I grew up with. I sit across from her and order tea, and for a few minutes, we make awkward small conversation about the weather and our jobs. Then Lena takes a big breath and informs me that she has been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder with relationship obsessions. She writes that her therapist, Hannah, assisted her in seeing that the obsessive thoughts about me and Ethan were not reasonable jealousy. They were a sign of OCD, which caused her brain to become fixated on worries of abandonment and betrayal. She's now taking medicine and practicing coping methods in therapy, and she says it's as if someone turned down the volume on the incessant, worried cacophony in her thoughts. Lena begins to clarify that her jealousy was never directed especially at me or Ethan. It was about the underlying anxiety of abandonment that we felt as children. She tells about how we were constantly compared to one another, how she believed she needed to be flawless to be loved, since any defect meant I would be picked over her. She claimed she internalized the belief that love was conditional and might be taken away if someone better came along. So, she attempted to regulate everything to keep this from happening. I sat there listening, aware that while I spent our childhood feeling invisible next to her, she spent it feeling as if she was one mistake away from losing everything. We grew up in the same house but had quite different experiences with our families, and none of us realized what the other was going through. I take a deep breath and tell Lena that I too have something to offer. Growing up, I often felt like I was under her shadow. She seems perplexed, so I explain that I was just the younger sister who wasn't as attractive or successful. I felt invisible next to her. Lena's expression shifts, and she adds, she had no clue I felt that way. She had always assumed I had it easier since there was less pressure on me. We sat there for a long time talking about our childhood in ways we had never done before. We both realized we had wasted years misunderstanding one another's experiences. She tells me that she felt she had to be flawless or lose our parents' affection. And I tell her how I felt like nothing I did was important since she had previously done it better. It's the first time we've had a completely honest chat about being sisters. When we're about to leave the cafe, Lena asks if there's anything she can do to make up for everything other than say sorry. I think about it for a minute and tell her that the most important thing is that she continues to go to therapy and work on her mental health, not just for me, but also for herself. She agrees and continues. Hannah has been helping me understand that my problems are more than just the wedding situation. We walk out to the parking lot and stand by our cars for a few minutes, just talking about everyday topics like work and the weather. Before we drive away, Lena advises that we attempt progressively mending our connection, such as meeting for coffee once a month, to practice honestly communicating with each other. I agree and tell her there is no need to become great friends overnight. We're simply promising to attempt. She appears relieved and gives me a short embrace before leaving in her car. Driving home, I feel lighter than I have in months. Maybe we have a chance after all. A few days later, I'm at my parents' house for Sunday dinner when my Uncle George approaches me in the kitchen. He says he's proud of me for being ready to give Lena another opportunity while maintaining good limits. George has always been the wise one in our family, the one everyone turns to for advice on relationships and life issues. He replies, "What I'm doing is what real forgiveness looks like, that it's not about pretending nothing happened, but about choosing to move forward anyway." I tell him I'm worried Lena will revert to old behaviors, and he tells me that this is why limits are important. I can promote her progress without allowing her to hurt me again. We rejoin everyone in the dining room, and I notice my parents watching Lena and me converse with a hopeful expression on their faces. They seem terrified to trust that things will improve between us. 6 months pass, and I'm asked to a small family dinner at my parents' place. When I arrive, Lena is already there, helping Mom prepare the table. We greet each other and strike up a casual discussion about a television show that we both enjoy. It isn't perfect, and there are certainly some awkward times, but it seems real in a way that our relationship never has before. We all settle down to eat, and Dad asks Lena about her new work, which she discusses without the phony enthusiasm she used to have while attempting to convince everything was fine. Later, while we're cleaning dishes, Mom draws me into the hallway and expresses her relief to see Lena and me chatting and laughing together. I could see she was concerned that we would never talk again after the wedding debacle. Throughout the evening, I find myself enjoying Lena's company, not pushing or acting, but truly finding her hilarious and intriguing. When I leave, Lena escorts me to my vehicle and tells me she started volunteering with a mental health advocacy organization. She reveals that she has been telling her experience at their meetings to assist others identify compulsive relationship patterns before they damage their life. I am amazed and impressed that she has turned her worst experience into something important, that she is utilizing what occurred to benefit others. She says Hannah urged her to find a way to give back, and it seemed right. I tell her that I believe she's really brave, and she grins in a different manner than before, more genuine. A week later, I'm at work when my phone vibrates with a text message from Ethan. I haven't heard from him in months, so I'm interested about what he wants. The letter states he's begun seeing someone new, and it's going great, and he wanted to thank me for being a supportive buddy during his healing journey. I text back expressing my sincere happiness for him and asking how he's been. He phones me during my lunch break, and we spend 30 minutes talking about his life and his new partner. He sounds lighter, like if he's finally gotten over everything that occurred with Lena. I inform him about Lena's improvement in therapy and the voluntary work she does, and he says he's delighted she's getting therapy, but he's not ready to make contact with her yet. I understand perfectly and tell him he owes her nothing. Before we hang up, he expresses his hope that Lena and I can create something healthy together and that sisters are crucial. After the call, I sat in my car reflecting on how bizarre it is that Ethan and I are now friends, despite hardly knowing one other before all of this happened. The wedding calamity bonded us in an unusual manner. Both of us are victims of Lena's infatuation. That evening, while I prepare supper in my apartment, I begin to reflect on the events of the previous year. The wedding tragedy was one of the most terrible events of my life, as I saw my sister blame me in front of everyone and then witness her relationship crumble. However, it also taught me valuable lessons about limits, forgiveness, and the distinction between enabling and supporting someone's development. I realized that ignoring or justifying someone else's actions will not solve their mental health problems. I learned that true love is being honest, even when it is difficult, and that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their actions. Lena and I will never have the ideal sister connection that you see in movies, but we're creating something genuine and honest. We're learning to communicate without the anger and rivalry that characterized our youth. It's slow and even difficult, but it seems worthwhile. A year after the wedding, that never happened. Lena texts me and asks if I want to go on a weekend vacation together. Only the two of us, no parents or other family members. An opportunity to spend actual time together. I am frightened about it, but I agree. I figured if things became odd, I could simply drive home early. We reserve a spa weekend at a resort 3 hours away and drive there on Friday afternoon. The first few hours are a touch awkward as we settle into our hotel room and learn how to be with each other for an extended amount of time. But by supper that night, we're conversing freely, exchanging anecdotes about work, friends, and strange events in our lives. On Saturday, we have massages and relax in the hot tub, and Lena opens up about her therapy sessions in ways she hasn't before. She discusses the work she's doing to understand her fear of abandonment and how it has influenced her conduct in relationships. I discuss my personal issues with feeling invisible and how moving away helped me develop my own identity, apart from being Lena's younger sister. We spend hours by the pool chatting about our future goals and our determination to break the toxic familial habits we grew up with. Lena reveals she's afraid to date again because she doesn't trust herself to identify when she's going into compulsive behaviors. I tell her that's what therapy is for, to help her acquire those abilities. On Sunday morning, before we check out, we sit on the balcony drinking coffee and admiring the dawn. Lena thanks me for giving her another opportunity, and I say I'm pleased I did, but I can sense she's working hard to change. As I drive home Sunday afternoon, my car full of spa items and my body relaxed from the weekend, I'm feeling really positive about our future as sisters. We've both matured tremendously over the last year, working hard to understand ourselves and one another. The wedding day was painful, and I would not wish it on anybody, but it pushed us both to face facts we had been avoiding our whole lives. Instead of pretending everything was all right, Lena had to confront her mental health difficulties and get proper treatment. To prevent confrontation, I needed to learn how to set limits and quit limiting myself. Sometimes the most difficult periods in life lead to the most significant progress, and I'm thankful we both had the fortitude to complete the hard work of mending. Our relationship will always have the scars of what transpired, but they are now part of our tale. They remind us of how far we've come and what we've learned. I turn up the music and pull down the windows, feeling the warm air pour through the vehicle.